But you yourself, sir, have said before that you believe Putin is a war criminal, that is a widely accepted fact. You've called him a butcher. And you've said that as a Secretary of State, you do believe it's important for someone with such global influence as you have to speak with that kind of moral clarity.
I'm not going to fall into this trap of the who's bad and who's evil. People can make those conclusions. People have seen how this narrative is played out and where we are today and how this all started and so forth.
You yourself have said previously that Putin cannot be trusted in negotiations. That was the point that President Zelensky was ultimately making during that conversation, is that there cannot be an agreement without security guarantees, because he was talking about all the ceasefire agreements before, or agreements that Putin has just blown past. I mean, do you still feel that way, that Putin cannot be trusted in these negotiations?
Well, I was there yesterday when the president said in front of the media that our approach is going to be trust but verify. President Trump's made deals his entire life. He's not going to get suckered into some deal that's not a real deal.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. As promised, here's part 2 of my conversation with Julie Roginsky, who, as a former Fox News co-host turned Democratic strategist, understands the cutthroat world of politics, Republican politics in particular, in ways few people do. I asked her why so many politicians, especially those in Trump's orbit, demean themselves the way Marco Rubio just did in order to stay in power. I think Julie's answer nails it. Before we get into it, I do want to offer this in response to the Trump administration's disgraceful behavior in the Oval Office last Friday. We are living in dark times. I do believe that the allure of Trumpism will end, and probably sooner than we think, because it is based on lies about Democrats, about democracy, and I believe about human nature. But even when America does return to its senses, it will be decades before our reputation recovers. When MAGA is ultimately relegated to the dustbin of history, which it will be, it will take a generation for America's former allies to once again trust us. Because why should they? Donald Trump has convinced them with his behavior towards Zelensky that we cannot be relied upon, that we will turn our backs on our friends to appease a dictator. The events of last week, to quote a president who understood real tyranny, will live in infamy. As ashamed as I am today of my government, I was inspired to watch Ukraine's president stand firm and tell the truth, even as he found himself surrounded by Trump's pack of hyenas. While Ukraine's honor remains intact, America's shame will endure. Here's part 2 of my conversation with Julie Roginsky. You've spent a lot of time in D.C. around electeds, around representatives and senators. Does it surprise you how badly they want to hold on to their jobs? I mean, I've known quite a few. Almost every one of them is happier after they lose an election, right? I mean, it takes a little while.
Yeah.
But it is I lost an election for Congress, and in many ways I'm glad I did, because I joke now that I got better stuff to do. Like, it is a grind, but the tenacity with which people hold on to that job and the associated status and power and the moral compromises they make to do it, it sometimes baffles me that they're willing to mortgage their integrity, their soul, for a job it baffles me.
You know, I think, having worked on the Hill, here's what you have to understand. Every day that you wake up, you have an entire staff of people whose existence revolves around making you look good and serving your every need and every whim. These people spend all day long thinking about ways to make you look good, and then they spend all night long not sleeping thinking about the same thing. You get driven to your office. You get into a members-only elevator. You eat in the Senate dining room where nobody else is allowed to eat. If you want tickets to the Rolling Stones that are hard to get, or I'm totally dating myself here, maybe it's not the Stones, I don't know who, Taylor Swift, you're going to get it, right? People, you're in the world's most exclusive club, quote unquote. People really suck up to you. The entire ecosystem of the city exists to make you seem and feel important. When you go home to your district, you have special driver's special plates. You don't get pulled over because it says, member of Congress, member of the Senate. I mean, everything exists to make you feel important. And that's a hell of a drug. And that is something really hard to give up. And you're absolutely right. I'm sure much like every other drug addict, once they recover, once they go through rehab and get it out of their system, they feel much better and much healthier. But it's really hard to recover from that in the meantime. And, I look at somebody like Susan Collins. I mean, the woman has worked either on the Hill or in the administration or as a senator her entire career. She has never done anything else. She knows nothing else other than being somebody like this. She's been in the Senate since 1997. And that's really complicated because what do you do? Do you go back to Bangor, Maine and freeze for the rest of your like what do you do? Then suddenly you're just living in Bangor, Maine and nobody really thinks you're that important and people are like, oh, there goes Susan Collins. She used to be somebody one day. Tom Tillis, same thing, right? What do you do? Do you go back to selling insurance? All of these people have become the most important people in the world to themselves since they got these positions. And at some point, you got to wonder, is this what you're doing? Are you throwing out the Pax Americana? Are you throwing out an established world order that has kept this country safe and really the Western world safe, relatively safe, I should say, for the better part of 80 years because you can't imagine life outside the United States Senate? Are you really that terrified? I mean, how pathetic. What does that say about you? I mean, how pathetic. And I say this, and I've said this before, I come from a country where people went to the gulag for looking at somebody the wrong way. And these people are afraid of a primary. I mean, are you kidding me? This is what you're afraid of? You're afraid of potentially not being driven to work every day and having people stuck up to you every day? So what?
I think that explains a lot. That is one of the clearest psychoanalyses I've heard of this phenomenon. I have to ask you, because of your experience as a Dem strategist, what we're doing wrong. How do we respond to that? You mentioned the militias a second ago, and I was part of a number of tabletop exercises / war games that anticipated a lot of what's happening right now. And it was just all so cerebral and also theoretical. And the response of the blue team, the Democratic team, almost every time was, let's file a lawsuit or let's write a strongly worded letter, right? There wasn't the kind of urgency and what I feel now, rage at what is happening to motivate Democratic leaders. What are we doing wrong?
Well, first of all, we have no idea how to communicate. None. Zero. Our leadership has failed us start to finish. It's just incredible to me as somebody who's dedicated her life to basically teaching candidates how to communicate and to be a communicator, how awful we are at communicating our message. We are all over the map. We are timid. We don't call things out. We wait to focus group things. We wait to have consultants like me tell candidates what to say. But things are moving so quickly. There's no time to focus group. There's no time to figure it out. You've got to respond. And there's a Quinnipiac poll out the other day that I thought was so instructive. Every element of Trump's policy, for the most part, is loathed. I mean, everything. And yet, this is like a gift. This is like a gift from God to us to say, people really don't like what he's doing. And yet we're not communicating. And yet our numbers are worse. Something like 20, I think it was something like 21% of all voters approved of congressional Democrats. The plurality of Democratic voters, almost 50%, don't approve of what their Democratic legislative candidates or legislators are doing on the Hill. I mean, what does that say? That says that they're failing. That says that if they don't get their act together, they're going to go the way of Eric Cantor back in whenever it was during the Tea Party, 2010. They're going to go the way of Joe Crowley, who AOC beat, because they're not delivering for the voters. They're not standing up and sounding a five-alarm fire. I mean, look at this podcast. I'm sure you have the exact same thing that I have in my podcast, and we're all hearing the same thing. People are scared. They're angry. They want action. And when they hear Democrats saying, well, what do you expect us to do? We're in the minority. What do we do? Well, there's a bunch of different legislative tactics. I mean, look at what Mitch McConnell did when he was in the minority. He held up Obama's agenda for a long time, and very effectively so. You have a 3-vote or 3 to 5 vote, depending on who's in office these days on the Republican side, majority on the Republican side. I mean, what is the problem? Don't talk about helping them out on the budget or concessions that they can give you in exchange for your vote. It's their country. They have just elected a trifecta. They control the courts, they control the executive, they control the legislative branch. Anything that happens is on them. And if you help them succeed, you will not be in the majority, because why would somebody vote for somebody if the other side is succeeding? So just stop cooperating. It's their party. They're in charge. Let them come up with the votes to pass everything. You want a debt ceiling hike? Let them pass it. You want a budget? Let them pass it. No votes, nothing.
Hey everyone, it's Ken. I've got another amazing writing retreat to share with you. The last one in Archeron, France is full, but another has opened up and it sounds just as incredible. It's in the Italian countryside, not far from Rome, and it's hosted by 2 award-winning writing coaches, Athena Dixon and Anne-Marie Kelly. Just imagine writing in a place like this. Telling stories is what makes us human, and we all have those stories in our pockets about love and loss, joy and grief. Let Anne-Marie and Athena help you lay your stories on the page. You'll gather each morning in an historic Italian village to focus on craft and storytelling. And afternoons will be spent with local artisans passionate about sharing their culture and traditions. This once-in-a-lifetime retreat is for women of all ages and experiences who long to build community, search for answers, and dismantle the roadblocks that stand in your way. Athena and Anne-Marie practice writing as a form of healing, and don't we all need that right now? If you want to write beautiful prose in a beautiful place, join Athena and Anne-Marie at Strada Toscana. No more excuses. This world-class coaching team will help you put your stories on paper in an amazing setting. Join them in Italy this fall. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. Thanks. I feel like when it comes to political comms, we have an infrastructure that is built entirely around the 2-year election cycle. And I guarantee you in 12 or 18 months, we'll start seeing the kinds of ads about stories that you and I care about the vet who lost his job at the VA because he was on probation, about the inspectors for a nuclear weapons program who lost their jobs because DOJ just took a chainsaw to Department of Energy. We need that now. Like, we need to see, I think one answer, in addition to the legislative tactics, would be for every elected Democrat to go on offense like it's a campaign year. Like you're running for office right now. Get those ads up right now. Start talking to the people that you represent the way you would a year from now. Do it now. Hold your town halls now. Put your ads out on the Super Bowl, not the Super Bowl, but the Browns Steelers halftime slot. Do that now, because that's what we need to see.
Yeah, I mean, that costs money, so obviously they want to bank it for the election. But here's what doesn't cost money. Going on podcasts like this, spreading out across all media. Like, these people, and look, I spent a lot of my career on cable news, so I'm not denigrating cable news, but they spend a lot of time getting booked on CNN or MSNBC to talk to people. That's great. That's fantastic. You should do that. But the average age of the viewer on those cable networks is in the late 60s, median age, right? It's a certain demographic. It's an important demographic, but it's not the end all be all. Why are you not fanning out to every single possible outlet to talk about your message? First of all, figure out what your message is, right? Figure it out and then hammer it every day. You're absolutely right. We live in an election cycle that never ends. And what Donald Trump did so brilliantly is he lost. He got together with all of his Project 2025 people, and he came up with a plan, and he executed that plan. And the problem is that we don't have a plan, and we're not executing it because we don't have it. And yet, I don't understand for the life of me why every single Democrat is not clamoring to get on your podcast and every other podcast with any kind of viewers. all day long. That is the game right now.
Yeah.
That is the game. And you should stop writing sternly worded dear colleague letters. You should stop giving floor speeches that nobody watches unless they really watch C-SPAN. Like, cut that out. Like, those days are over. They're over. I worked in the Senate when Robert Byrd was there. That was a really long time ago. It was a very genteel Senate. People kind of got along. That's been gone for a really long time. I mean, that was back in 2001. Those days are over. That was a generation ago. And I just don't understand why it's taken so long to catch up. I mean, they literally did a presentation where Cory Booker, who's a former client of mine and I really love, but Cory Booker gave them a talk about, you post on Instagram X times a day, and you post on Twitter X times a day, and you post on, TikTok X times a day. And that was their social media instruction. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're still figuring out how often to post on Instagram? How about you just take your phone just like this, put it up, just like this, and start talking into your phone and saying, this is what's going on, and I'm absolutely frigging out of my mind about it, and post it.
Yep.
Everywhere.
I'm with you 100%.
A normal human being, by the way. You should also learn to speak the English language the way the rest of us speak it, and not, call it Senate-ese, which is a completely different language than the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm part of the problem is the consultant class as well. I mean, the entire comms infrastructure is built to make certain people rich, right? And they have a vested interest in making sure you don't deviate and you don't find your own voice. So I don't know how to fix that.
Let me tell you a secret, as somebody who has made a very nice living off of being part of that consultant class. We have to justify our pay by telling you that we have some sort of secret formula, some sort of secret sauce to telling you what to say and how to say it. I could tweak it for you at the margins, but here's what people want right now. I'm literally a traitor to my class by telling you this right now. Say what's on your mind. Just say it like a normal human being. Say what's on your mind like a normal person, and don't worry about it. You don't have to be polished. In fact, the less polished you are, the more you sound like the rest of us. Just say it. Just look at what AOC is doing. Just she's a normal person, right? You could agree with her, you could love her, you could hate her. It's not even about policy anymore. It's truly about sounding like the person who you're asking to vote for you. Your next door neighbor is not sitting there trying to figure out which words and which adjectives to use. They just say it. They just say, I'm effing scared out of my mind about what's happening right now, and I need somebody to help me. My Social Security check is not coming because Elon Musk has taken over Social Security. I'm not going to get my Medicare payments. My mom's going to be thrown out of her nursing home because Medicaid is going broke because they're paying for a tax cut for Elon Musk. Like, how hard is that to say? Because it's the truth. And say it like you mean it, rather than these kind of, voice of God. Oh, I'm very concerned, and I'm going to send a dear colleague letter, and I've made the president aware of my concerns, and I wrote a letter to the White House. Like, you know what Trump is doing with that letter to the White House?
Right. Yeah. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Talk to people. They want to hear from you. And I think, and you probably have this too. I hear from people I've never met who just want somebody to tell them what the plan is. And right now, I've not heard anybody in the Democratic Party voice what the plan is.
Well, hopefully some of them see this. Thank you, Julie, so much. Would love to have you back on. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.